Hi, I'm Lisa K. Donner, along with Jeff Charles, Sarah Cowgill, Tim Donner, and Scott Cosenza. And this is the Conservative 5, Liberty Nation's online TV news program. The trial of Derek Chauvin, the Minneapolis policeman charged with the murder of George Floyd, has gripped the nation, much like the O.J. trial all those years ago did. Americans are glued to their TVs and ready to play armchair jurors and attorneys. It's amazing how much the facts of this case haven't made it into the general conversation. Some folks say it's out and out murder. Others cite that Floyd's health conditions and criminal actions are what got him in the end. Let's find out what our expert panel has to say. Well, Liberty Nation actually has a true legal savant who has been covering the trial minute by minute. Legal Affairs editor Scott D. Cosenza. Scott, can you bring us up to speed with a few of the interesting twists and turns in the trial thus far?
Well, I think that the big evidence is yet to come, Lisa. We're still in the first week of trial, and basically what we had is a deluge of video presentation from both spectators and police. And I think the thing that has struck me the most, as somebody who's watched really every minute of the trial broadcast that I have access to, so I really, I've tried to cover the entirety of what's out there, like a juror would see. When the first video was played, the reaction is like just devastation. It's beyond a horror to watch. It stays with you. I thought about it late that night. But when they're piled on, video after video after video, with Mr. Floyd's protestations that we know are false, meaning when he was first pulled over, he was complaining that he couldn't breathe then and yelling for his mama and asked not to be murdered. Now, when he's down on the ground with those police officers piled on top of him, slowly descending into unconsciousness, that looks beyond horrific. But when you see it played out in another fashion prior to that instance, right, he's just about getting out of being arrested for the possession of drugs, for instance. It plays differently. So as this continues to go on, I think it's going to be interesting in sort of how that plays in the minds of jurors. And that's something I haven't seen talked about much.
All right, Sarah, what do you make of the goings on thus far?
It's so early, and I think we've seen so many videos. What I want to know, and maybe this is a good thing for also our viewers, is what is the jury composed of? Who are these people? I mean, what's the makeup of the jury, and are they sequestered? Are they allowed to?
Okay, you haven't been reading Scott's story. Scott, tell her the makeup of the jury.
Well, to the last question first, they are not sequestered. The judge has said that he will sequester the jury when it comes time for deliberations, which we would expect in like 3 weeks. But also they have the option to sequester the jury prior to that if, situation presents itself that changes somehow his decision making in that regard. And that's up to the judge himself. Right now, according to the Minneapolis Star-Tribune reporting on what the court has released to them, there are 4 black people, 2 multiracial people, and 8 white people on the jury, 5 men and 9 women.
Well, I mean, do you think that makeup is a fair, maybe, assessment of a jury pool for this particular crime?
Certainly not if we go along racial lines, which it seems like those, in the body politic want to go along. If we do that based on race and sex lines, then Mr. Chauvin is not getting a fair trial. It's way outsized, represented by people who aren't his racial makeup, which is to say people who aren't white and people who aren't his sex.
So wait, is it indicative of the community?
That's what I'm saying. No, it's not. No, if it were indicative of the community, there would be fewer black people on the jury and fewer women on the jury. There would be more men and more white people. So the idea that, I just say that, that's sort of halfway tongue in cheek, but that's how they would be talking about it if it were a black defendant, right? And there was a little more outsized on the jury as it is. So there will be no complaint that's rational or based in the facts from anybody based on, that it was outsized to kind of go against Mr. Floyd or to favor Chauvin with over white representation, for instance. Right now, it's over minority representation on the jury based on the population of Minneapolis.
All right, Jeff, what's your take?
Well, yeah, and I agree that, if you're looking at it from like a hard left point of view, they would figure that, you can't make a rational decision that's not based on your race. But we know that that's not true. Either way it goes, regardless of who the defendant is and who the victim is. But what's interesting here is the charges that he's facing, and the fact that, people are wondering, did they overcharge him? And I kind of think they did. I'm not a lawyer, but I know that Keith Ellison, put some extra charges on there that probably aren't going to stick. And this is going to be cynical Jeff coming out right now. And I think that Keith Ellison, along with other people on the left, they're going to use this to push their agenda. Either way this goes, if he doesn't get convicted of anything, they can use that to claim racism. If he gets convicted of a lesser charge, but not of the higher charges, they can still push their racial agenda. They can still push for riots. I mean, we saw Keith Ellison holding a book with Antifa on it, so we know he has no problem with riots.
It's a perfect scheme. There's no result that doesn't accrue to their benefit. It's
exactly
just more evidence that the system's even more racist than we thought. If he doesn't,
and it is absolutely brilliant. It's insidious, it's evil, but it's brilliant. And I really hope that this doesn't work out the way they want it to, because I think the way they want it to work out is another summer like what we had last year.
Can you sum up all the charges, because there was some last minute stuff
Well,
there.
the fighting was about a third-degree murder and whether that could be added or not added to the basket of charges. I won't get into the kind of inside baseball arguments about that, because I don't think we have time. But he's charged with second-degree murder, second-degree manslaughter, and third-degree murder. And the reason why that could be a complicated. I suggest that people go to libertynation.com, Lisa, and check out some of my pieces where I have the time to really go in depth as to why that could accrue to the defense's benefit if he's only convicted of that third-degree murder charge. It's kind of a novel application of third-degree murder. Usually that's used for DUI cases, not where somebody's intentionally acting against one other person. And it is based on shenanigans by Mr. Ellis.
One sec, stop. Can you just give us the skinny on third-degree murder? I don't think everybody knows exactly what third-degree murder is.
Well, so third-degree murder happens when typically you kill somebody without intending to kill that person, but you do something that is so reckless that we would all agree that it's unacceptable risk of death. So, for instance, there's a passenger train coming down the tracks, and you have a rifle, and you're 500 yards away, and you just aim at the train and shoot at it, and you kill somebody inside the train. Well, you didn't even know that person was alive to begin with. How could you have intended to kill that particular person? You didn't, but you acted in a way that resulted in their death in a manner that was so, it's called depraved heart murder is another way that it's called. And so, for instance, drunken driving, same thing. You get blasted, blind drunk and drive down the road. Well, you crash into a car and kill 7 people. You had no idea they even existed again, much less were on the road. You didn't intend to kill them, but your actions caused their death in a depraved heart way. So that's why it seems like it's wonky to apply that to this case where they're alleging that Derek Chauvin put his knee on George Floyd's neck, not just some general activity that produced an outsized risk to a generalized population that Mr. Floyd happened to fall into. That's why it's a novel application. So they want to charge him with that because one court in Minneapolis applied a third-degree murder case to a sort of specific person, like Mr. Floyd in this instance. And they wanted to add the charge, Lisa, I believe because it presents a compromise verdict for the jury. In this case,
right.
Yeah, in this case, there's so much pressure to convict. That's something that often prosecutors will try to do to their benefit, meaning if you add a compromise verdict, then maybe you get the person who's like, well, I don't really think he's guilty, but at least this isn't the second-degree murder with 40 years. We'll go with third degree and we can actually go home and, have a summer rather than watch the cities burn. And that's exactly why the Chauvin people fought so hard against it, was because it offers a compromise verdict. And from their perspective, it should be, did he murder the guy or not? Not, yeah, but also, and let's put him away anyway for some lesser crime.
It's doubtful that Chauvin will walk in this case, in my opinion, if for nothing else than his lack of humanity toward Floyd. As to whether he should have the book thrown at him, well, that's for the jury to decide, and I don't think it's going to be an easy task. I'm certainly glad I'm not on that jury. Thank you very much, panel. That's That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform, YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble, we're on them all. As well, Liberty Nation has its own Roku channel where you can see all our TV productions. Thanks so much for tuning in. And remember to surf on over to libertynation.com. Sign up for our new member zone, just $29.99 a year. This has been a production of libertynation.com, conservative news, where truth matters.